The maid warned him his wife put poison in his drink. He didn't listen. Then what happened changed his life forever. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I used to think I was the luckiest man alive. My name is Daniel Ashford, and at 42, I had everything a man could want. A sprawling colonial estate in the Connecticut countryside, white columns gleaming in the sun like something out of a dream. A technology consulting firm that generated 7 figures annually with minimal effort on my part anymore. And Isabella, my wife of 8 years, a woman so beautiful that men would literally stop mid-conversation when she walked into a room. We were the couple everyone envied. At charity galas, we moved through crowds like royalty. Her hand would rest on my arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light, her laugh like wind chimes in summer. People called us power couple goals, magazine profiles, social media perfection. The Ashfords living proof that success and love could coexist beautifully. I should have known better. Looking back now, I can see the signs. They were always there, subtle as shadows at noon, but present nonetheless. The way Isabella would tilt her phone away whenever I entered a room. How she'd excuse herself to take calls in the garden, her voice too low to hear through the French doors. The overnight business trips that became more frequent. New York, Boston, sometimes Miami, always for her interior design consultancy that never seemed to land the big contracts she promised were coming, but I trusted her. God help me, I trusted her completely. Our home was a showpiece, 14 rooms, each decorated with Isabella's impeccable taste. She had an eye for beauty that bordered on supernatural, knew exactly which shade of cream would make a room feel larger, which vintage mirror would catch the light at sunset. The dining room was her masterwork, a crystal chandelier that cost more than most cars, a table that could seat 20, and walls lined with oil paintings she'd collected from European auctions. We employed a small staff. There was Marcus, our groundskeeper, who maintained the 5 acres with obsessive precision, James, our part-time driver, and Elena, our housekeeper and cook, a 60-year-old woman from Romania who'd been with us for 3 years. Elena was quiet, efficient, almost invisible in the way good help is supposed to be. She moved through our home like a ghost, leaving behind nothing but the scent of lemon polish and fresh laundry. Isabella had hired her after our previous housekeeper retired, finding her through some agency that specialized in European domestics. The night it all began was a Friday in late September. Autumn was turning the maples along our driveway into torches of red and gold. I'd spent the day in video conferences, finalizing a deal with a pharmaceutical company that would net us a $2 million contract. I felt good, accomplished, ready to celebrate with my wife over a bottle of the Chateau Margaux I'd been saving. Isabella was radiant that evening. She wore a silk dress the color of midnight, her dark hair swept up to expose the long curve of her neck. She'd made reservations at Lucia's, the Italian place we loved, but I suggested we spend the evening at home instead, just the two of us. She smiled that smile that had first captivated me a decade ago. That sounds perfect, darling. Let me tell Elena we'll eat in tonight. I changed out of my suit into slacks and a cashmere sweater. Through the bedroom window, I could see the sun setting over our pool, turning the water into molten copper. This was my life, this peace, this beauty. I'd worked myself half to death in my 30s to build the company, sacrificing weekends and holidays, and now I was reaping the rewards. Downstairs, Isabella had set the dining room table herself, something she rarely did. 2 place settings at one end of that massive table, candles already lit, the good china catching the flickering light. She'd put on music, something classical and romantic that I didn't recognize. I'll open the wine, I said, heading toward the kitchen. Already done, love. Elena opened it to let it breathe. Just bring the glasses. I found the bottle on the kitchen counter, already decanted. 2 crystal glasses sat beside it, catching the overhead light like prisms. I picked them up and returned to the dining room, where Isabella was arranging white roses in a vase. That's when Elena appeared. She materialized in the doorway so suddenly that I nearly dropped the glasses. Her face was pale, her hands wringing the apron she wore over her black uniform dress. She looked at Isabella, then at me, her mouth opening and closing as if she couldn't find words. "Elena," I said, "everything all right?" Isabella turned, her expression darkening. "Elena, we discussed this. You're done for the evening. You can go home." But Elena didn't move. Her eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Mr. Ashford," she said, her accent thick with emotion, "I must speak with you. Please. It's very important." "Elena, this is inappropriate," Isabella said, her voice sharp as a knife. "Whatever it is can wait until morning." "No," Elena said, and I'd never heard such force in her voice. "Cannot wait. Mr. Ashford, please. In private." I looked between them, confused. Isabella's jaw was set, her eyes flashing with anger. Elena looked terrified but determined, like someone about to jump off a cliff. "Isabella, why don't you check on dinner?" I said carefully. "I'll just see what Elena needs." My wife's expression could have frozen blood, but she smiled that controlled, social smile she used when displeased, and glided toward the kitchen. "Of course. Don't be long. The pasta will be ready soon." I followed Elena into the hallway, near the base of the grand staircase. She kept her voice low, barely above a whisper, and kept glancing toward the kitchen as if afraid Isabella would materialize like a demon. "Mr. Ashford, you must listen to me. Your wife, Mrs. Isabella, she is putting something in your drinks. Every night. In your wine, your coffee, your water. I see her. Many times." I actually laughed. The sound echoed off the marble floors, harsh and incredulous. "Elena, that's absurd. Why would you say something like that?" "It's true." Her eyes were desperate, pleading. "I see her. She has small bottle, keeps in her makeup bag. Every night when she brings you drink before bed, she puts drops in. Always I watch her." My amusement curdled into irritation. This was insane. Paranoid. "Elena, I don't know what you think you saw, but—" "Not think. I know. I see with my own eyes. Please, Mr. Ashford, do not drink tonight. Do not drink anything she gives you. Test it. Smell it. You will see." "That's enough," I said, my voice harder now. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but making accusations like this is completely unacceptable. My wife would never—" "She wants to hurt you," Elena interrupted, tears now streaming down her weathered face. "I see the sickness in you getting worse. The headaches you have, the forgetting, the tiredness all the time is not natural, Mr. Ashford. She is poisoning you slowly." A cold sensation spread through my chest, but I pushed it away. This was ridiculous, melodramatic, the kind of thing you'd see in a bad movie. "Elena, I think you need to take some time off. A vacation, maybe. You're clearly stressed." "No!" She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "You must believe me. I have no reason to lie. I risk my job telling you this. But I cannot watch anymore. I cannot be silent when I see what she does. Please, please, Mr. Ashford, be careful tonight." Isabella's voice drifted from the dining room. "Daniel, is everything all right?" I pulled my arm free from Elena's grasp, gentle but firm. "Go home, Elena. We'll discuss this on Monday. But I think you should seriously consider whether this job is right for you anymore." The devastation on her face should have moved me, should have made me pause. But I was angry now, angry that she'd tried to plant this poison seed of doubt in my mind, angry that she'd disrespected my wife with such vile accusations. Elena looked at me for a long moment, her expression transforming from desperation to something like resignation or pity. Then she nodded slowly, turned, and walked toward the service entrance. I heard the door close quietly behind her. When I returned to the dining room, Isabella was pouring the wine. The red liquid caught the candlelight, looking dark as blood in the crystal glasses. "What was that about?" she asked, handing me my glass. I accepted it, wrapping my fingers around the stem. "Nothing. Elena's apparently having some kind of breakdown. Said some crazy things." Isabella's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Oh, what kind of crazy things?" I hesitated. Voicing Elena's accusation seemed to give it weight it didn't deserve. But Isabella was looking at me expectantly, her head tilted in that way that meant she wouldn't let it drop. She claimed you were putting something in my drinks, poisoning me or something. For a split second so brief I almost missed it. Something flickered across Isabella's face. Then she laughed, and the sound was so genuine, so full of shocked amusement, that my remaining doubts evaporated. She said what? Oh my God, Daniel. That's insane. Why would she even think something like that? No idea. Maybe she's jealous? Some of these older housekeepers, they get possessive of the household, view wives as competition. Well, she obviously has to go, Isabella said, taking a sip of her wine. We can't have someone unstable working in our home. I'll call the agency on Monday. Agreed. She raised her glass toward mine. To us, and to not being murdered by my devoted husband. I clinked my glass against hers, appreciating the dark humor. To us. The wine was excellent, rich, and complex, with notes of black cherry and tobacco. Isabella had outdone herself with dinner, homemade pappardelle with wild boar ragu, a arugula salad with shaved parmesan, and tiramisu for dessert. We talked about the pharmaceutical contract, about the vacation to Santorini we'd been planning for November, about whether we should replace the pool house roof before winter. It was perfect, normal, exactly what our life should be. By the time we went to bed, I'd completely dismissed Elena's warning as the ravings of a disturbed woman. I felt fine, happy even, pleasantly full of good food and wine. Isabella and I made love, her body warm and familiar against mine, and I fell asleep with her head on my chest, feeling grateful for every choice that had led me to this moment. I woke up at 3 a.m. feeling like my head was splitting open. The pain was incredible, a pulsing agony that made my vision blur. I stumbled to the bathroom and dry heaved into the toilet, my hands shaking, sweat pouring down my back. When I finally looked in the mirror, my face was pale as chalk, my pupils dilated to the point where my eyes looked black. Isabella found me there 20 minutes later, sprawled on the cool tile floor. Daniel, Jesus, what's wrong? Don't know, I managed. Migraine. Bad one. She helped me back to bed, brought me water and Tylenol, stroked my hair, while the medication slowly took the edge off the pain. Her touch was gentle, concerned. The touch of a loving wife worried about her husband. You've been getting these headaches a lot lately, she murmured. You should see Dr. Carson. Just stress, I mumbled, already drifting back toward sleep. The pharmaceutical deal. Lots of pressure. Shh. Sleep now. We'll figure it out in the morning. But in the morning I felt fine. Tired, yes, with a residual dull ache behind my eyes. But functional. I went for my usual run through the property, came back and showered, ate the breakfast Isabella had prepared. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh orange juice. By noon the headache was completely gone. Elena didn't show up for work on Monday or Tuesday. When I called the agency, they said she'd given notice, citing personal reasons. They'd send a replacement by the end of the week. Probably for the best, Isabella said when I told her. Someone that unstable shouldn't be around our food anyway. I agreed. And yet some small part of me, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, felt a whisper of unease. Over the next 2 weeks, I had 3 more episodes. Always at night, always a few hours after dinner. The symptoms varied. Sometimes the crushing headaches, other times nausea and vertigo so severe I couldn't stand. Once a heart palpitation so fierce I thought I was having a cardiac event. Each time Isabella was there, supportive, worried, urging me to see doctors. I did. Dr. Carson ran a full battery of tests. Blood work, MRI, EKG, stress test. Everything came back clean. Perfect health, he said, for a man my age. Maybe it was anxiety? Had I considered therapy? You're working too hard, Isabella said one evening, massaging my shoulders as we sat in the study. Your body is telling you to slow down. Maybe it's time to hire a CEO. Let someone else handle the day-to-day operations. Maybe, I said, but the suggestion bothered me. The company was my creation, my baby. The idea of handing control to someone else felt wrong. That night I woke at 2 a.m. again, this time with my heart racing and my mind spinning in strange directions. I felt disconnected from my body, like I was floating above myself, watching some other Daniel Ashford stumble through the dark hallway. I found myself in my study without quite remembering how I'd gotten there. The moonlight through the windows painted everything in shades of silver and shadow. I stood there, swaying slightly, trying to remember what I'd come for. Then I saw Isabella's purse on the chair, where she must have left it earlier. I don't know what made me look. Some instinct, some buried survival mechanism breaking through the fog in my brain. I picked it up, my hands moving almost of their own accord, and opened it. Her wallet, keys, lipstick, compact mirror, and a prescription bottle. I held it up to the moonlight, squinting to read the label. But there was no label, just an amber plastic bottle, the kind medications come in, but blank. I opened it and shook out a few drops onto my palm. Clear liquid, odorless. Water? Or something else? A sound made me freeze. Footsteps on the stairs. I quickly put the bottle back, zipped the purse, and set it exactly where I'd found it. By the time Isabella appeared in the doorway, wearing one of my t-shirts, I was sitting at my desk pretending to look at emails. "Daniel, what are you doing up?" "Couldn't sleep. Just checking some things for tomorrow's meeting." She came to stand behind me, her hands on my shoulders again. "You're not well, love. You need rest, not work." "I know. Just give me a few minutes." She kissed the top of my head. "Don't be long. You need sleep." After she left, I sat in the dark for a long time, my mind churning. The bottle could be anything. Medicine she was embarrassed about, antidepressants maybe, or something cosmetic. There were a dozen innocent explanations, but Elena's voice echoed in my memory. "She wants to hurt you. I see the sickness in you getting worse." I went back to bed but didn't sleep. I lay there listening to Isabella's breathing, watching the shadows move across the ceiling, feeling something cold and dark taking root in my chest. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I checked Isabella's phone. She was in the shower singing softly to herself when I picked it up from her nightstand. My hands were shaking. I felt like a stranger to myself, like I'd become someone untrustworthy and paranoid. But I couldn't stop. It was locked, of course, but I knew her passcode, her mother's birthday. At least I thought I knew it. When I tried it, the phone gave me an error message. Incorrect passcode. She'd changed it. When? And why? "Daniel, can you hand me a towel?" I dropped the phone like it had burned me, grabbed a towel from the linen closet, and brought it to the bathroom door. Isabella emerged in a cloud of steam, her skin pink from the hot water, smiling at me. "You're sweet. Thank you." I watched her get dressed, this woman I'd been married to for 8 years. Who was she? Did I actually know her at all? "I'm going into the city today," she said, applying moisturizer to her face. "Meeting with a potential client. Big townhouse renovation in the West Village. I'll probably be home late." "Okay." She paused, studying me in the mirror. "You seem off. Are you feeling all right?" "Fine, just tired." She turned and came to me, placing her cool palm against my forehead. "No fever, but you look exhausted. Promise me you'll rest today? Maybe skip the office. Work from home?" "Yeah, maybe I will." After she left, I sat in the bedroom for a full 10 minutes, staring at nothing. Then I did something else I'd never done before. I went to check our security cameras. We had them installed 2 years ago after a series of burglaries in the area. 6 cameras covering the perimeter of the house, plus 2 inside, 1 in the front hallway, 1 covering the back entrance and part of the kitchen. I pulled up the footage from the previous evening on my laptop, fast-forwarded through hours of nothing. Then, there, Isabella in the kitchen around 9 p.m. She was taking wine glasses out of the cabinet, setting them on the counter. Then she glanced toward the doorway, checking if anyone was watching, and pulled something from her pocket, the small amber bottle. I watched, my pulse pounding in my ears, as my wife carefully tilted the bottle over one of the wine glasses. 3 drops, 4, 5. Then she recapped it, put it back in her pocket, and carried both glasses toward the dining room, where I'd been waiting. I replayed it 3 times, hoping I was misunderstanding what I was seeing, but there was no other interpretation. Isabella had put something in my drink, deliberately, secretly. Elena had been telling the truth. My wife was poisoning me. The question was why. I spent the rest of that day in a fugue state, moving through the house like a ghost. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of it. We had a prenup, a fair one, but not overly generous. If we divorced, she'd get alimony, sure, but nothing compared to what I was worth. And we had no children, no custody battles to complicate things. If she wanted out of the marriage, divorce was the obvious answer. Unless she wanted everything. If I died, Isabella would inherit it all. The company, the house, the investment portfolio, millions of dollars, but that seemed too simple, too mercenary. The Isabella I knew wasn't motivated solely by money. She had her own career, her own income. She'd never seemed particularly interested in my wealth beyond the lifestyle it provided. Then what? I pulled up her social media profiles. Instagram was full of artfully composed shots of our life. The house, her design projects, the two of us at various events. Happy couple. Perfect marriage. But as I scrolled back through months of posts, I noticed something. In photos from 6 months ago and earlier, she was always smiling at me. Genuine, warm smiles. In more recent photos, her smile never quite reached her eyes. When had that changed? I switched to her Facebook, which she used less frequently. And there, in a post from 4 months ago, I found it. A check-in at a hotel in Boston, tagged with another person, a man named Marcus Crane. My stomach dropped. I clicked through to his profile. Good-looking guy, maybe 35, with that effortless charm that made me instinctively dislike him. His bio said he was an art dealer based in Manhattan. His recent photos showed gallery openings, yacht parties, the kind of conspicuous wealth that made my success look modest. I went back through Isabella's photos. There he was in the background of a shot from a charity gala 3 months ago. And there again, at some restaurant I didn't recognize. Always carefully cropped, always peripheral, but present. How long had this been going on? I opened my laptop and pulled up our credit card statements. Isabella had her own card on our account. I'd never monitored it before, trusted her completely. Now I scrolled through months of charges, hotels, expensive ones, restaurants in cities she'd supposedly been visiting for work. But when I cross-referenced the dates with her calendar, the stories didn't line up. She'd tell me she was in Boston meeting a client, but the charges showed her in New York. She'd claimed to be at a design conference in Philadelphia, but room service charges appeared from a hotel in Washington, D.C. I sat back, feeling sick, not just from whatever she'd been putting in my drinks, but from the scale of the deception. This wasn't a casual affair. This was systematic, calculated. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and I'd been too trusting, too stupid to see it. But why kill me? Even in my worst nightmare scenarios about discovering infidelity, I'd never imagined Isabella would want me dead. Divorced, sure, but murdered? Unless Marcus Crane didn't want to wait for a divorce? Unless he wanted Isabella and my fortune immediately. I pulled up our life insurance policies. I had a $10 million policy with Isabella as the sole beneficiary. We'd taken it out 5 years ago, back when the company was just starting to take off, and I wanted to make sure she'd be provided for if something happened to me. $10 million, plus the company value, at least $40 million if sold, plus the real estate, investments, everything else. Isabella and Marcus could start a whole new life with that kind of money, go anywhere, be anyone. All they had to do was kill me, and they were doing it slowly, carefully, making it look like natural causes, stress, overwork, a heart attack or aneurysm that no one would question in a type A executive in his 40s. I felt rage then, pure white-hot rage. This woman I'd loved, provided for, trusted completely. She'd been trying to murder me. For money, for some pretty boy art dealer with a yacht. But underneath the rage was something worse, fear. Because if I was right about all this, I was in serious danger. And I had no idea how much poison was already in my system. What if it was too late? What if the damage was irreversible? I grabbed my keys and drove to the nearest pharmacy, bought a home testing kit for common toxins. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely count out the cash. Back home, I locked myself in the bathroom and followed the instructions. Drew blood with the lancet, added it to the test strips, and waited. Positive. The test showed elevated levels of something. The kit couldn't identify the specific toxin, but it confirmed that there was something foreign in my bloodstream, something that shouldn't be there. I had proof. Finally. But proof of what exactly? And more importantly, what the hell was I supposed to do with it? I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. What would I tell them? My wife is poisoning me because I found some photos on Facebook and mysterious charges on our credit card. They'd think I was paranoid, and Isabella would deny everything, probably paint me as a jealous, controlling husband having some kind of psychotic break. I needed more. Concrete evidence. Something undeniable. That's when I decided to stage my own death. Not literally, that was too risky. Too many things could go wrong. But I would make Isabella think the poison was working faster than she'd planned. Force her hand. Get her to reveal her plans, hopefully on camera, so I'd have evidence that even the most skeptical cop couldn't dismiss. It was insane. But I was out of options. That evening, when Isabella came home from her client meeting, Manhattan hotel charges I'd already checked, I acted like everything was normal. We had dinner Thai takeout, nothing she could tamper with since we ate straight from the containers. I made sure to pour my own wine, filling my glass from a bottle I'd opened in front of her. She didn't seem concerned. Chatted about her day, about the townhouse renovation, which I was now certain didn't exist, about maybe getting a dog. A dog. Jesus Christ. As if we'd be playing fetch in the backyard in 6 months instead of me being in a grave. Around 10 p.m., she made her move. I'm going to make some chamomile tea, she said. Want some? It'll help you sleep. Sure. That sounds great. I watched her go to the kitchen. From where I sat in the living room, I couldn't see her preparing the tea, but I'd already set up my phone in there earlier, propped on the shelf, recording. She returned with 2 mugs, steam rising, the scent of chamomile and honey. She handed me one with a smile. Here you go, love. I took it, wrapped my hands around the ceramic, felt the warmth, and I realized that this was it, the moment. I was holding poison in my hands, and my wife was watching me with an expression of tender concern, waiting for me to drink. How many times had I already done this? How many times had I unsuspectingly ingested whatever toxin she'd chosen, never once imagining that the woman I loved was trying to kill me? I raised the mug to my lips, saw the satisfaction flicker in Isabella's eyes, and I pretended to drink. I made a show of it, tilting the cup, making small swallowing sounds. But I kept my lips closed, let the liquid touch my mouth without taking any in. It was harder than it sounds. The smell alone made me want to gag, knowing what it contained. Good? Isabella asked. Perfect, thank you. We sat there for another 20 minutes, watching some mindless show on Netflix. I kept fake sipping the tea, occasionally getting up to stretch my legs, and spitting the liquid into a potted plant in the hallway, or into a towel I'd hidden behind a chair. Finally, Isabella yawned and announced she was going to bed. Don't stay up too late, she said, kissing my forehead. I won't, just want to finish this episode. After she went upstairs, I retrieved my phone from the kitchen, played back the footage, and there it was, clear as day. Isabella preparing the tea, looking over her shoulder, pulling that amber bottle from her pocket, and adding drops to one of the mugs. Then, for good measure, she stirred it carefully and even smelled it, checking to make sure the chamomile scent covered whatever poison she was using. I had her. On video. Proof. But I didn't call the police. Not yet. Because I wanted to know the full scope of this. I wanted to know about Marcus Crane. I wanted to understand exactly how they'd planned to get away with this. And I wanted them to pay. Both of them. So I put the next phase of my plan into action. The following morning, I pretended the poison had affected me more severely than usual. I stumbled coming down the stairs, clutched the railing like my legs wouldn't hold me. At breakfast, I knocked over my orange juice glass on purpose. But Isabella didn't know that, and apologized, saying my hands were shaking. I couldn't seem to control them. Her eyes lit up, just for a second, but I saw it. Excitement. This was working faster than she'd expected. Daniel, that's it. I'm calling Dr. Carson right now. This isn't normal. No, I'm fine. Just didn't sleep well. You're not fine. She grabbed my hand and I had to suppress my revulsion at her touch. You're getting worse. Please, let me take you to the hospital. I made a show of reluctance, then finally agreed. We drove to the emergency room, where I described my symptoms in dramatic terms. Chest pains, difficulty breathing, numbness in my extremities. They ran tests. I knew they'd find nothing definitive, just like before, and eventually sent me home with instructions to rest and follow up with my primary care physician. In the car on the way home, I fell asleep, my head lolling against the window. I could feel Isabella watching me, could practically hear the gears turning in her mind. How long now? How much longer until he dies? That evening, I told her I was going to bed early. Couldn't keep my eyes open. She helped me up the stairs, so caring, so devoted, and tucked me in like I was a child. I love you, she whispered, kissing my forehead. Love you too, I managed to say, each word like poison on my own tongue. After she left, I lay there in the dark, listening. I'd installed an app on my phone that would alert me if anyone entered the bedroom, and I had a small camera hidden in the bookshelf, pointed at the bed. Around midnight, I heard her leave the bedroom. Quiet footsteps down the hall, a door closing. I checked my phone. She was in her study, the room she used for her design work. I crept out of bed and moved silently down the hallway until I was outside her door. She was on the phone. I pressed my ear to the wood and listened. Better than we thought. He can barely walk today. I know, but we have to be patient. Maybe 2 more weeks, 3 at most. The doctors can't find anything. That's the beauty of it. No, there's no way to trace it back to us. I told you it's not detectable with standard toxicology. Yes, I'm being careful. A pause, then, Marcus, I can't wait either. I'm so tired of pretending, of playing the devoted wife. When this is over, we can finally be together. I know, I love you too. There it was, confirmation. Not just that she was poisoning me, but why. She wanted to be with Marcus Crane, and she wanted my money to fund their new life. I'd heard enough. I went back to bed and lay there, rage and grief warring in my chest. Grief for the marriage I'd thought I had. Grief for the woman I'd thought Isabella was. Rage at the betrayal. Rage at my own blindness. But mostly I felt cold, calculating, because now I knew exactly what I needed to do. Over the next few days, I played my part perfectly, the dying husband, getting weaker by the day. I stopped going to the office entirely, claiming I didn't have the strength. I ate less easy to do when I suspected Isabella was now putting the poison in everything, not just drinks. I stayed in bed most of the day, appearing to sleep but actually listening, watching, gathering evidence. I installed additional cameras throughout the house, hidden in places Isabella would never think to look. I recorded every conversation she had with Marcus, and there were many, usually late at night when she thought I was unconscious. They were planning their future, a villa in Tuscany, travel through Southeast Asia. Marcus wanted to open a gallery in Paris. Isabella talked about finally being free, about not having to pretend anymore, about how much she'd sacrificed being married to someone so boring, so conventional. Each word was a knife, but I welcomed the pain. It kept me focused. I also did my research on the poison. I'd sent a sample of my blood to a private lab, paying extra for rush analysis and discretion. The results came back with a substance I'd never heard of, a rare botanical toxin derived from a plant native to Southeast Asia. It was nearly undetectable, caused symptoms that mimic stress and overwork, and would eventually lead to organ failure that would look entirely natural. Clever. She'd done her homework. The lab report also said that the levels in my system were high, but not yet fatal. If I stopped ingesting it immediately and underwent chelation therapy, I'd likely make a full recovery. That was good news, because I was going to need my strength for what came next. I hired a private investigator, not locally, but someone from Boston who had no connection to Connecticut or my social circles. Within 3 days, he'd compiled a comprehensive report on Marcus Crane. The art dealer story was partially true, but heavily embellished. Marcus did work in the art world, but mostly as a middleman for questionable transactions. He'd been investigated twice for fraud, once for fencing stolen goods. No convictions, but plenty of smoke. He was also broke. His flashy lifestyle was funded entirely by debt and the occasional con. The yacht in his photos? Rented, The gallery opening? Someone else's? Marcus Crane was a grifter, and Isabella had fallen for it. Or maybe she knew. Maybe they were both grifters, and I was just the mark. The PI also discovered something interesting. Marcus had a wife, still legally married, though separated, to a woman in Philadelphia who'd filed a restraining order against him 6 months ago, claiming he'd threatened her after she refused to give him money. This was the man Isabella wanted to spend my fortune with, a violent con artist with a history of manipulation. Perfect. I decided it was time for the final act. I called Dr. Carson and asked him to come to the house for a private consultation. He was reluctant, wanted me to come to the office, but I told him I was too weak, couldn't make the drive. Finally, he agreed. On the day of his visit, I made sure Isabella would be home. She'd planned to go into the city, but I told her I felt worse than ever, asked her to stay. She couldn't refuse without seeming callous. Dr. Carson arrived at 2 p.m. I met with him in the study with Isabella present. I described my worsening symptoms in detail, emphasized how scared I was, how nothing seemed to help. He was perplexed. "Daniel, all your tests come back clean. There's no medical explanation for what you're experiencing. Have you considered that this might be environmental? Something in the house? Or perhaps, has anything changed in your routine recently?" I watched Isabella stiffen slightly. "Actually," I said slowly, "now that you mention it, these symptoms started around the time we got a new housekeeper, a few months ago." "Interesting," Dr. Carson said. "Could be an allergy to a cleaning product she's using. Or mold, perhaps, if she's not cleaning properly." "But she's not here anymore," Isabella interjected quickly. "We let her go weeks ago." "True," I said, "but the symptoms have continued, maybe even gotten worse." I turned to Dr. Carson. "Is there any way to test for toxins? Something that wouldn't show up on regular blood work?" The doctor frowned. "Are you suggesting poisoning?" "I don't know what I'm suggesting. I just want answers." Isabella laughed, too loud, too sharp. "Daniel, you're being paranoid. Who would poison you?" "I didn't say anyone would. I'm just asking if it's possible to test for it." Dr. Carson looked between us, sensing the tension. "There are specialized toxicology panels. They're expensive and take time, but yes, we can test for a wide range of substances. I can order one if you'd like." "Please," I said. "I need to know what's wrong with me." After he left, Isabella was furious. She tried to hide it, but I could see the fear beneath the anger. "That was completely unnecessary," she said, "making him think you're being poisoned. Do you have any idea how that reflects on me? People will think I'm doing it." "Why would they think that?" I asked innocently. "Unless you have reason to feel guilty?" Her eyes flashed. "Don't be absurd. I'm worried about you, Daniel. But this paranoia is getting out of hand. Maybe you need to see a psychiatrist, not a medical doctor." "Maybe," I agreed, "but let's wait for the test results first." That night, I didn't pretend to drink the wine she offered. I poured it into a vial I'd hidden in my pocket, another sample for evidence. When she asked why I wasn't drinking, I said the doctor had advised against alcohol until they figured out what was wrong. She looked disappointed but didn't push. I also told her I'd changed my will. It was a lie, but I wanted to see her reaction. "Changed it how?" she asked carefully. "Set up a trust. If I die, my assets will be managed by a board of trustees for 5 years before being distributed. Protects against anyone trying to benefit immediately from my death." The color drained from her face. That seems extreme." "My lawyer suggested it. Given my health issues, he wants to make sure everything's protected." "Protected from what?" I shrugged. "Legal challenges. Gold diggers. You never know." That night, she made 3 phone calls to Marcus. I recorded all of them. Her panic was evident. The plan was falling apart. If I died now, she wouldn't get the money for 5 years. And by then, the trustees would have done their due diligence, possibly uncovered the affair, maybe even discovered the poisoning. "We need to stop," she told Marcus. "It's too risky now." But Marcus was insistent. "You're so close, just a little longer. We can figure out the trust issue later." "No," Isabella said, her voice rising. "I'm not doing this anymore. It's over." "You don't get to quit now," Marcus snarled, his charm evaporating. "I've invested too much time in this. We both have. You're going to finish what you started. Don't threaten me. I'm not threatening. I'm reminding you that we're in this together. If you back out now, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've been doing. The police, your husband, everyone. She was trapped and she knew it. I waited 2 more days, gathering the last pieces of evidence I needed. Then I made my move. I called Detective Sarah Morrison of the Connecticut State Police. I'd researched her specifically. She specialized in domestic crimes and had a reputation for being thorough and discreet. I invited her to the house while Isabella was supposedly meeting a client. I showed her everything. The videos of Isabella adding substances to my drinks, the recorded phone calls with Marcus, the lab reports showing toxins in my blood, the credit card statements proving the affair, the private investigator's report on Marcus Crane. Detective Morrison sat in my study for 2 hours, reviewing it all. Her expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. "Mr. Ashford," she finally said, "this is one of the most well-documented cases I've ever seen. But I have to ask, why didn't you come to us sooner?" "Because I wanted to understand the full scope of it, and because I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. Rich husband claims his beautiful wife is trying to kill him. It sounds like paranoid fantasy." "It's not fantasy," she said grimly. "This is attempted murder, and based on these calls, conspiracy to commit murder. We need to arrest her immediately." "Not yet," I said. "There's one more thing I need." I told her my plan. She was hesitant. It was risky, potentially dangerous, but she agreed. We'd do it that evening, with police backup nearby. When Isabella came home, I was waiting in the dining room. I'd set the table beautifully, opened a bottle of wine, lit candles, the perfect romantic dinner. She was surprised but pleased. "What's all this?" "I wanted to do something special, to thank you for taking care of me these past weeks. I know it hasn't been easy." Her smile was radiant. "Oh, Daniel, you don't have to thank me. You're my husband. I love you." The words should have meant something. Once they had meant everything. Now they were just sounds, empty syllables. We ate. We talked. I told her the trust had been a misunderstanding. My lawyer had clarified that it wouldn't actually apply in the case of natural death, only suspicious circumstances. I watched relief flood her features. "That's good," she said. "I mean, not that I was worried about the money. I just want you to get better." "I know," I said. "And I think I am. I've been feeling stronger the last few days. Maybe whatever was wrong is finally leaving my system." Doubt flickered in her eyes. Was I getting better? Had she not given me enough? After dinner, we moved to the living room. Isabella poured herself another glass of wine. I'd made sure not to drink any of mine. I was completely sober, alert, ready. "Isabella," I said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you love me?" She looked startled by the question. "Yes, of course I love you. Why would you ask that?" "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like you're distant, like there's something you're not telling me. Daniel, you've been sick. That's made things stressful. But I do love you. I've always loved you." "What about Marcus Crane?" The name hit her like a physical blow. Her wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Red wine spread across the wood like blood. I don't... Who?" "Marcus Crane, the art dealer from Manhattan. The man you've been sleeping with for the past 6 months. The man you've been planning your future with." She went pale, opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Daniel, I know everything, Isabella. The affair, the hotels, the phone calls. I know you've been poisoning me. I have videos of you doing it. I have lab reports proving there's toxin in my blood. I have recordings of you and Marcus discussing my death." She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "You're insane. You don't have any such thing. You're paranoid and sick, and you need help." "Detective Morrison," I called. The detective emerged from the hallway where she'd been waiting, along with 2 uniformed officers. Isabella's face went from pale to ashen. "Isabella Ashford," Detective Morrison said, "you're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." Isabella looked at me, and in that moment, I saw everything. Shock, fear, rage, and something else. Resignation. She'd known this moment might come, had probably imagined it in her darkest thoughts. "Daniel, please," she whispered as they cuffed her. Please, I can explain. It's not what you think. Save it for your lawyer, I said. They took her away. Just like that, the woman I'd shared a bed with for 8 years, who'd been trying to murder me for 6 months, was gone. But the night wasn't over. An hour later, New York police arrested Marcus Crane at his apartment in Chelsea. They found the rest of the poison there. He'd been supplying it to Isabella, had connections through his art world dealings to procure rare toxins. They also found emails detailing the entire plan, including discussions about how to spend my money after I was dead. The trial was a media sensation. Beautiful wife tries to murder wealthy husband with exotic poison, aided by con artist lover. It had everything: money, sex, betrayal, attempted murder. The news vultures loved it. Isabella's lawyers tried everything, claimed I'd fabricated evidence, suggested I'd been abusive and she'd acted in self-defense. A laughable claim given the premeditation evident in months of recorded conversations. They even tried to paint me as the villain, a controlling husband who'd driven his wife to desperation. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Isabella got 25 years. Marcus got 30, given his prior record and the fact that he'd supplied the poison. Neither would be eligible for parole for at least 15 years. I sat in the courtroom and watched Isabella's face as the verdict was read. She didn't cry. Didn't react at all, really. Just stared straight ahead, her expression blank. As they led her away, she turned and looked at me one last time, and I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't expected. Pity. Why pity? She was the one going to prison. She was the one who'd thrown away everything for a con artist and a fortune she'd never get to spend. What could she possibly pity me for? I didn't understand until later, much later. The divorce was finalized 6 months after the trial. I got everything, obviously. The house, the business, all of it. I went through chelation therapy to remove the remaining poison from my system. The doctors said I was lucky. Another month or two, and the organ damage would have been irreversible. As it was, I'd recover completely. So I was free, healthy, rich, alive when I should have been dead. I should have been happy. But the house felt empty, massive and echoing and cold. I walked through rooms that had once been filled with laughter. False laughter, poisoned laughter, but laughter nonetheless, and heard only silence. I threw myself into work, grew the company, made more money, bought a penthouse in Manhattan, a beach house in the Hamptons, dated beautiful women who looked at me with dollar signs in their eyes. None of it meant anything, because Isabella had taken something from me that I could never get back. Not my health that had returned, not my fortune. I had more money than ever. She'd taken my ability to trust, my ability to love, my ability to believe that anything or anyone was real. I lay awake at night in that big empty house and replayed our marriage in my mind, tried to figure out when it had turned, when the woman I loved had become someone capable of murder. Had she ever loved me at all? Or had I been a mark from the beginning, a wealthy target she'd seduced and married with this endgame always in mind? I'd never know, and that uncertainty was its own kind of poison. Elena, the housekeeper who'd tried to warn me, had disappeared. I tried to find her, to thank her and apologize for not believing her, but the agency said she'd moved back to Romania. No forwarding information. She'd risked everything to save my life, and I dismissed her as crazy. 2 years after Isabella's conviction, I was having dinner alone at an expensive restaurant in Manhattan. A woman approached my table, young, beautiful, with bright eyes and an engaging smile. "Excuse me," she said. "I know this is forward, but aren't you Daniel Ashford? I've read so much about your company. I'm a business consultant, and I'd love to pick your brain about—" "No," I said, cutting her off. "I'm not interested. Please leave." The light in her eyes died. She looked hurt, confused. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "I said leave." She left, and I sat there alone, staring at my untouched meal, wondering if she'd been genuine or if I'd just avoided another predator. I'd never know that either. That's what Isabella had really taken from me, the ability to distinguish between truth and lies, between love and manipulation, between sincerity and performance. She'd poisoned more than my body. She'd poisoned my soul. I sold the Connecticut house a month later. Couldn't bear to be there anymore. Couldn't walk through rooms where she'd smiled at me while planning my murder. Couldn't sleep in a bed where we'd made love while she was slowly killing me. The new owners thought they were getting a dream home. They had no idea it was a mausoleum. I moved into the Manhattan penthouse full-time. 53rd floor, glass and steel and clean lines. No memories, no ghosts. I saw a therapist, Dr. Patricia Chen, 3 times a week. Worked through the trauma, the betrayal, the anger. She was good at her job, patient, understanding. But even with her, I held back. Because how could I be sure? How could I trust that she wasn't writing a book about me, or planning to sell my secrets to the tabloids, or had some other agenda I couldn't see? I couldn't. I'd never be sure of anyone again. 6 months ago, I started getting letters from Isabella. They were forwarded through her lawyer, since I'd blocked all direct contact. At first, I threw them away unopened. Then curiosity got the better of me. She wrote about her life in prison, the routine, the other inmates, the monotony. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't claim innocence or try to justify what she'd done. She just wrote, as if we were still married, as if she was away on a long trip and sending me updates. It was disturbing, intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. In her most recent letter, she wrote, I know you'll never understand this, Daniel, but I did love you. Maybe not the way you love me. Maybe not enough, but I did. And I'm sorrier than you'll ever know that I let Marcus convince me love wasn't enough. That money mattered more. I was wrong about everything, and I'll spend the rest of my life paying for that mistake. But you're paying too, aren't you? In your own way. That's why I pitied you when they read the verdict, because I knew that even though I'd be the one in prison, you'd be the one who'd never be free. I read that letter a dozen times, trying to find the manipulation in it, the angle. What was she hoping to gain by saying these things? Or was she simply telling the truth? I'll never know. That's the hell of it. I have all the facts, all the evidence, video proof of her crimes, but I'll never know what was real and what was performance. I'll never know if any moment we shared was genuine, and that uncertainty is worse than the poison ever was. Last week I went on a date. A colleague had set me up with her sister, a doctor, intelligent, funny, kind. We had dinner at a quiet Italian place in the village. She was lovely. We talked for hours about medicine, technology, travel. She laughed at my jokes, seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. I drove her home and walked her to her door. She turned to me smiling and said, I had a wonderful time. I'd love to see you again. And I looked at her, the smart, beautiful woman who seemed perfect. And all I could think was, what's your angle? What do you want from me? How long until you try to destroy me? I don't think that's a good idea, I heard myself say. I'm sorry. I'm not ready for this. The disappointment on her face was genuine. I'm sure it was. Probably. I drove home alone and stood at my penthouse window, looking out over the glittering city. All those lights, all those people, all living their lives, falling in love, trusting each other, building futures together. Things I'd never do again. Elena had warned me. I hadn't listened. And yes, I'd survived. I'd won in every measurable way. I was alive. Isabella was in prison. Justice had been served. But she was right to pity me. Because the poison had done its work after all. Not the physical poison that had been flushed from my system long ago, but the poison of doubt, of suspicion, of knowing with absolute certainty that the person you trust most in the world can smile while they kill you. That poison has no antidote. I'm 54 now, wealthy beyond measure, successful, healthy, alive, and completely, utterly alone. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd listened to Elena that first night, if I'd believed her warning and confronted Isabella immediately. Would she have confessed? Could we have somehow salvaged something? Probably not. The affair, the planning, the months of deception, all of that was already done. The marriage was already over. I just didn't know it yet. But maybe if I'd acted faster, I wouldn't have had to see the full scope of the betrayal. Wouldn't have had to watch videos of my wife poisoning me. Wouldn't have had to hear recordings of her and Marcus laughing about my death. Maybe I could have preserved some small part of my ability to trust, but I didn't listen. I drank the poison she offered again and again, not just that first night, but for months before I finally understood. And in doing so, I poisoned myself far more thoroughly than she ever could have. That's the real story, not the crime, not the trial, not even the attempted murder. The real story is what happens after you survive. When you realize that survival isn't the same as living. When you understand that some betrayals are so profound that they change you at a molecular level. I survived the poison. But I'm not sure I survived Isabella. And that's the truth that keeps me awake at night. Standing at this window, looking out at a world full of people I can never trust again. Elena tried to warn me. She risked everything to save my life. I didn't listen. And now I'm alive but not living. Free but in prison, surrounded by luxury but dying of loneliness. The poison worked after all, just not the way anyone planned.